Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Matt here with Winning with Real Estate. So, what I'm going over today is actually the process of purchasing a property, the nuts and bolts of it all, right? So, the first step of the process is going to be the pre-approval stage. Now, the pre-approval stage is probably one of the most important processes because it is the start of your journey. The importance of getting the pre-approval done is it allows you to identify how much house you can actually afford. Now, you don't want to spend your time looking at $500,000 houses if you can only afford a $300,000 house. So what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to be able to narrow down our search criteria, and it usually is the first step of the process. The second step of that process is really going to be to find the right agent, and that agent is going to help you find the right home at the right price at the right time and within the right location. This is so critical and so key because you want to be able to know that you're getting the right valued house and you're not spending $300,000 on a $250,000 house, right? So that's really going to help you out and help you in this process, right? Now that we've actually found the right property, we're going to actually enter in the third step, which is actually making an offer. Now, I advise most of my clients on making offers. It's really case-by-case situation because there's the asking price, how much the seller is actually asking for the property. It's the buyer's ability to purchase that property and willingly able to purchase at that price. And then there's reality of what actually will get accepted. So all three different perspectives. So really, it definitely is a case-by-case situation, but two functions of every offer come into play: pricing and terms. Now, the pricing of a property is going to be dictated on the comps or comparable properties that have sold within the area within a given reasonable timeline. And now the terms are really going to also help you. Are you going with a conventional loan or FHA loan? Are you closing faster in a timeline that the seller would want? So these are two things that we look at when we're actually compiling our offers and we present to the seller. But now that you actually have given the seller an irrefutable offer, one they have to accept, we're going to get into the next stage, which is offer acceptance. Now we have the offer accepted. The seller now obviously signs off on all the contracts. Now you've signed off on the contracts. We are actually fully accepted the contract. Now, the property isn't under contract just yet, right? Because the next step of the process, the fifth step, is going to be the attorney review period. Now, the attorney review period is so critical because what it does is it allows both attorneys, the seller's attorney and the buyer's attorney, to review the terms of the contract and actually come in agreement on that contract. Now, once that period is completed, you're actually under contract on the property. But a couple things to note, right? The attorneys that you use here are critical, right? Because you don't want to get a defense attorney to work on your real estate transaction. Why? Because they don't specialize, they may not specialize in actual real estate. So it's really critical and it's really important that you get an attorney that specializes in real estate and have them look at the terms based on your location and have a good relationship, a good rapport with them so that they can work with you and identify some of the key things that you would be concerned about or you would have overlooked had you not had that attorney during this attorney review period. So now that we come to a completion on that step 5 and we're actually out of attorney review and attorney review has concluded, we enter in the next step of the process, and that is actually when you do your inspection. Now, one thing I always like to tell my clients is that the inspectors are going to make this property look like it is the worst property in the world. Any and everything they could find, they will find. And it's good in some cases and it's bad in other cases, right? But it's good to know what you're actually purchasing and what is wrong with the property, because at the end of the day, you are the one purchasing these issues, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to look at the foundation, they're going to look at the heating and cooling system, they're going to look at the plumbing, they're going to look at the exterior, interior, everything, nuts and bolts, they're going to touch doorknobs, everything. So this really is a critical time frame, because if you're buying a $300,000 house and it has foundation issues, then the value of the house is obviously in question at that point, right? And that's something that's going to have to get repaired so that you can actually live in the property safely and all that kind of stuff. And actually it allows buyers to understand what they're buying, and also gives them the opportunity to back out of the deal should anything large come into play, right? Any large issues with the property come into play, right? So now that the inspection period is concluded, what's going to happen is we're going to get a report back from the inspector, right? And what we can do is we're going to go through that report, and we're going to identify some key points, key things that we're going to ask the seller to repair, right? Essentially. So we actually we look at the compiled list, and we pick a couple things off of the list and say, hey, look, this has to be repaired, this has to be repaired, this has to be repaired. If the buyer and seller cannot come in agreement on that, then what happens is the buyer has the right to execute the buyer contingency clause in the contract, the inspection clause, and allows you to back out without losing any earnest money deposits. The only thing you would lose in this case would be what you spent on the inspection, which is about $500 usually. Now, after that process happens, right, simultaneously you are working with your lender to get all of your documentations in, and they go through a process, an underwriting process. And what they do is they confirm all the terms of your loan, and they look at all the financials, and they review everything and confirm all the financials that you've given them. And then what they do is they issue what's called a conditional approval. Now, the conditional approval is important because it gets you to the closing table, but it does not approve you. It doesn't give you a final approval, because a couple days before the closing date, they're going to rerun everything and confirm that nothing else has changed. This is where it comes into play, like when people purchase or looking to purchase a property, but then right before the closing date, they buy a car or finance whatever, something, or they spend all this money, and then they actually knock themselves out of the ability to actually purchase the property. So that's why they do a conditional approval, and then they give you a final approval at the end. So after that process is complete, we then do, the attorney then issues what's called a title search. Now, the seller has to be able to issue the property free and clear of any and all liens that may be on the property. So what they do is they do what's called a title search. They go down to the courthouse, and they look and they make sure the transfer of property has been recorded appropriately, and that there's no mechanics liens, no tax liens, or any liens that may be due upon the transfer of that property. So that's something that is very important, and title searches are very important, right? So now that we've done all of this stuff, we actually are going to get to the closing table. Finally, the day has come, right? So now we're able to close on the property. Being able to close on the property, then you just get to the closing table, sign all the docs up, and then you'll be able to close on that property. And then the last and final step would be to actually move in to the property. So I hope you got some value out of this. I hope this was helpful. If you could just like below if you actually got some value out of it, dislike if you don't, or heck, just also subscribe. I will be posting up some definite content going further in depth of each of these steps and anything real estate related. So here I am, winning with real estate. You're gonna want to know what to do and how to win in this real estate game. So subscribe down below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.